Hey guys, how's it going? Matt here with Nuance. I am in Ningbo, preparing for a typhoon that is coming up the coast. It's going to dump a lot of water and potentially disrupt life here in Ningbo for a while. China has been dealt a few blows in the last few days. If you haven't heard, Zhengzhou had some massive flooding, unprecedented flooding. And obviously, when a tragedy happens in China, you get predators. You get a lot of people who take it as an opportunity to castigate China as a whole, to inflate their own egos, to make themselves sound like heroes. I haven't been producing a lot of videos on the channel. I have some things happening here in my life that I'm working on, but I noticed that Winston and Matt, Laowhy86 and SerpentZa put out a video, and the cover of the video was an example of this opportunistic culture to hate on China. I actually believe in protest, and I believe that if you have an anger towards the government of China, that's fine. Actually, I don't really have any problem with that. You can hate whatever government that you want. No government is perfect. But the picture depicted a bunch of hands that were drowning in the form of a pool of blood, which was to represent the Chinese flag. And these hands were representative of the cold-heartedness of the government towards people in tragedies like this. And obviously, to prey on that, this artist put out this image to castigate China as a whole for this tragedy of flooding. And then, of course, your resident jumpers on, Winston and Matt, came in and made a long video. I'm going to go through their video. We're going to talk about it a lot like my last episode where I kind of discussed some things, but it's 2.5 hours. It's really long. I'm going to turn around, watch it every so often. I'm going to turn over the camera and kind of explain some things because I scrubbed through it real quick, and there's a lot of it's really disgusting when you have a tragedy like this. It's very unavoidable, okay? And we'll learn more about it later, but 624 millimeters of rain fell on Zhengzhou in 24 hours. A third of that in 1 hour. No city, no system anywhere in the world can redirect that much water in order to save its populace. It's a tragedy that is unavoidable unless you look at it from a climate change aspect, in which case a lot of these more unavoidable things will start to becoming more numerous, as we can see with the heat dome in USA and the flooding in Belgium and the numerous records that are being broken on a daily basis. And if you don't want to look at it that way, if you're a climate denier, you probably won't like this episode. But we need to give some nuance to these things. Instead of blaming China, we need to understand the greater picture of things. Listen, blame China if you want to on certain aspects, for sure. There's a lot to blame China on. There's a lot to blame a lot of governments in the world on different things happening. But let's watch their video and see, or let me watch the video for you and try to add some nuance to the things that they say, because it's really gross.
Now, before we start talking about these floods, we have to bring up the fact that flooding has been an issue around the world.
Oh, yeah.
It's been crazy recently.
Yeah.
Germany and where is it, Belgium and that part of Europe got destroyed by floods.
He starts talking about Belgium and the floods in Europe, which is very important to provide context for the world as it is today. There's a lot of problems with flooding, unprecedented flooding.
While a total of at least 176 people remain accounted for. Belgium accounts for 32 deaths and 18 missing. Germany, the hardest hit country, entire towns were inundated by water, claiming at least 173 lives.
Mm-hmm. And so he talks about how in Germany they're reporting on how many people are lost, how many people are missing, how many people are dead. And then he brings up arbitrarily that, this is why people don't like China, because they don't talk about the truth of what's happening in the area.
But what we've been seeing with the Chinese floods is, again, it's not that bad. Be nationalistic.
I am in China right now. The Zhengzhou flooding, as it was happening, was circulating around local news, local radio and throughout social media. There were videos of people drowning. There was videos of people being rescued. There was videos of cars floating down the road. There was on-the-spot videos of people reporting what was going on in Zhengzhou, and there was media that was backing up those reports. When the videos came out of the people in the subway train, people were hoping that those people would survive. 12 of the people in one of those subway trains did not survive, but the rest were rescued. I don't understand. A lot of people that hate China put China in sort of a catch-22 position. If they say 10 people died, they'd say they lied, more people died. If they said no people died, they'd say they lied, some people died. If they said 100 people died, they'd say 1,000 people died. There's really no way for China to win. They're either lying or they're really lying.
You know, China's great. Look at how amazing our soldiers are to come to the rescue.
And look at all of our soldiers coming to the rescue, and all they're doing is idolizing the rescuers. Well, what the fuck are you supposed to do with the rescuers? Are you supposed to insult them? Are you supposed to ignore them? Are you supposed to say that China is a place where nobody helps anybody and everybody's just reaching their hand out of the blood? That's the picture that you literally are painting. Not only the picture that you chose for your cover, but the picture that you're painting. The China that I know, the China that I'm living in right now, as a matter of fact, outside there's a typhoon headed here. It's going to drop water on this city like crazy. We are expecting flooding, and the entire city is gearing up for it, from the rural countryside to here. As a matter of fact, I'm charging little lights just in case we lose power later. My wife filled up a tub full of water just in case we need fresh water, and people are doing this all over the city.
Again, it's not that bad. Be nationalistic. You know, China's great. Look at how amazing our soldiers are to come to the rescue. By the way, only 33 people have died and, you know, everything's under control type thing.
And by the way, 33 people have died and it's all under control. Well, 33 people have died. By the time he recorded that, you know how many have died today? 51. And you know how many people will have died tomorrow as they figure out what's going on? More. Everything he wants to do is to degrade China's response. And when he says, and everything's back to normal, you want to know the truth? Zhengzhou is pretty much back to normal. Because you know what happens with floods? They happen and then they flood away. And people's cars are lost, people's houses have been flooded. But I have seen videos of Zhengzhou. The streets are still moist because it's still raining there. But the flood is gone. The water has receded. The systems that the city have in place to drain the city worked. It didn't work for the flood because it was unprecedented. Zhengzhou is situated next to the Yellow River. Flooding there is very typical, and this was an atypical amount of flooding that happened because of an extreme amount of rain.
We're going to be showing you a couple of clips. Don't worry, we're not going to show any dead people. We made sure we scrubbed.
Don't want to get demonetized, guys. Yeah. You know,
we didn't want to get demonetized. We would have shown you the dead bodies. We wanted to, but you know, we need that cheddar. We need that money. Now, remember this, because he always claims that all of his videos get demonetized. I believe that is not true. I produce videos, very similar topics, and I always tend to get those monetized. I believe that he's begging for you guys to give him money in the guise that he's not getting enough money from his videos to monetize. But right there, he said the extreme of putting dead bodies in his videos would demonetize his videos. But, you know, we would show you the dead bodies anyways. But now, because of demonetization, we won't. Well, that's basically him saying that the level of demonetization goes just about up to showing dead bodies. So unless those guys are showing dead bodies, it's pretty much a given that they're going to be able to make some money off of those videos. Anyways, let's continue.
The majority of these floods have been happening in Zhengzhou.
Can I set the stage for everyone? Zhengzhou is quite possibly one of the, and not to be a Debbie Downer, but one of the worst places I've ever been to in China.
Matt prefaces his degradation of Zhengzhou with the realization that it's probably one of the worst places he's ever been in China. And he says, not to be a Debbie Downer, don't worry, Matt. You are always a Debbie Downer. So it won't come as a surprise if you degrade a certain area of Zhengzhou.
Yeah.
I spent 2 days there because my plane got diverted. It is smack dab in the central China.
He spent 2 days there as his flight was delayed. So that would give him the opportunity to tell you exactly how bad this part of China is. So it's a good thing he stayed 2 days there.
It's a city that should be able to deal with floods. And I say that because 90% of the city is brand new.
At this point, he talks about how Zhengzhou is a new city, and therefore they should be able to be built for the infrastructure to prevent flooding like this. Now, Zhengzhou was hit with 24 inches, 624 millimeters of water in a day. A third of that happened in 1 hour. Modern cities around the world would get flooded with that amount of water. Big cities like that and new modern cities like that are going to have challenges like this in the future because more of these sorts of unprecedented storms are going to be happening.
Yeah, I mean, look, we got to also recognize that this rainfall that they've seen is the most that's ever
Yes.
been in recorded history. And when we say recorded history in China, that's not a very long time.
No.
Winston goes on to say that the Zhengzhou floods are the worst in recorded history. And that doesn't go back very far because they didn't really record much back then.
You know, don't forget, we had the bad old days with Mao Zedong and
Sure.
all that. And during that time, there are no records being kept, etc., etc.
And then he blames Mao Zedong, which is his go-to insult, is to just blame everything on Mao Zedong. Do you think that farmers and survey people and people that deal with floodplains were do you think they burned all those documents? Do you think that there is historical records of flooding, of rainfall, of all of this stuff that goes back? Why do you insult so blatantly such a stupid thing? Do you think that they just said, you know what, let's just get rid of all the statistical data that we have of the entire record of China? Have you ever been to a Chinese library? Have you ever read a book of Chinese history?
So since they've set up weather stations and stuff, so we got a couple decades of recordings here.
I just went online and I find flooding that goes back thousands of years. And very detailed analysis of flooding that goes back to the 20s, the teens, the 1900s and 1800s. What Winston's trying to teach you, or tell you, or get you to eat into his propaganda is that China's records just don't go before Mao Zedong. Mao Zedong basically destroyed everything that China had of its historical record, and it's just gone. That's just dumb.
They've now, the Chinese media, what they're doing now is covering the rescue efforts and the cleanup efforts. What they're failing to mention is that the flooding has just moved north.
Zhengzhou is a city of 10 plus million people live there. It's a huge tragedy. Not to discount the tragedy that's happening rural, but the way a lot of these things work is the flooding happens in these areas and is pushed out, and then as the water drains away, things get better. I have seen quite a few videos and news articles about the rural areas. If you're angry at what China is focusing on, they're focusing on the 10 million people that have just been rescued from this massive flooding. It would happen anywhere. If there was a flooding in New York City and the flooding had receded, people would be talking in America about New York City. The highest concentration of people are there, so the highest concentration of stories are there too. I don't see how this is a China, America, China West, East West thing. This is a media thing. There is still flooding all over. We're preparing for flooding here. But in Zhengzhou, entire subway systems were flooded up to the top. So of course, these are sensational things that are going to be covered by media, and people are going to be telling stories about it. It's not a China thing. It's a world thing.
The most horrible part, which we don't have in our media pack today, is the actual news announcers patting themselves on the back and patting the Chinese response on how well they've performed, rather than focusing on the fact that there's actual tragedy going on.
Okay, so the thing that really grinds Winston's gears here is the fact that the media and the government are patting themselves on the back for such a good job. And they're going to show you clips that they have scrubbed from social media, many of which I've seen on the news. The news! And he's going to say to you that we're showing you the real tragedy. But the media is not going to tell you. Media in China is not going to tell you the real tragedy. The media, they're getting this stuff from social media that they claim is controlled by the Chinese government. But all of us see, I can look at them right now on my phone. They're not being scrubbed from the Chinese internet. The Chinese government want people to see what's going on in China so that they can be prepared for it. Or they want to see what's going on in Zhengzhou so that they can be prepared for it if it does spread or if it does come to their areas. They understand the need to balance social media content, of course. But they're not telling you any secrets that the people around me don't know. We all know, whether we have VPNs or not, the tragedy. You go on my WeChat, everybody has this series of videos. On the WeChat news, we have like WeChat news pages. All of these videos have been shared. We all know the tragedy. But you know what? We also know of soldiers pulling people out of sinkholes and out of floodwaters, and people connecting together like caterpillars going out and trying to rescue people.
China has, like crazy, been building subway systems, and they're very effective. They work great for public transport. The Shenzhen metro system's incredible. I've actually been in Shenzhen during some of these kind of massive floods where they've had to shut them down.
Shenzhen is a very wet city. It's sort of tropical. There's a lot of rainfall there. So of course there's flooding. I lived in Detroit, in Michigan. We had flooding all the time. My basement would flood every few years. Dad would have to get the sump out and pump it out. I've seen the highway flooded, cars inundated over the roofs of the cars. Keep in mind, Winston and Matt live just outside of Los Angeles, if I remember correctly. It very rarely rains there. So their experience in that part of America might be wholly different from my experience in Detroit. His experience in Shenzhen might be wholly different from an experience of somebody in Dunhuang in China, in a dry desert area. But some places are in floodplains. The place where Zhengzhou is, in a lot of these areas, like around the Yellow River, they experience flooding all the time, which is why they've tried to create infrastructure and they've tried to control nature, which is an arguable, you can argue with dams and stuff. A lot of it has been successful. As a matter of fact, if you look at the previous ideas of what flooding can be in the world, they have a robust and good system to prevent that level of flooding. Up until, once a century floods, all those dams were prepared for that. Unfortunately, the world we live in has pushed beyond those norms, even beyond what we used to think as extremes, into a whole new zone of weather anomalies to which cities are not capable of resisting. This is the crux of the issue, not so much so. Obviously, urban planning goes into a lot of these issues, but not to the extent that they want to blame the CCP as the whole arbiter of the reason that these things are happening.
Well, you know what the sad thing is that I can't remember that, was it $6 billion or something was spent just last year, right? Mm-hmm. To make Zhengzhou, and the phrase they used in Chinese was to make Zhengzhou a sponge city, meaning it was flood proof.
Zhengzhou invested $6 billion in creating a sponge city, turning Zhengzhou into a sponge city. Let me explain sponge cities to you, because I actually went to Shanxi and I saw some of how they do this. They use porous concrete. They create a lot of drainage reservoirs. They also create a lot of natural wetlands that are designed to suck up water. And he says they invested $6 billion in creating Zhengzhou as a sponge city, and it must have been all squandered and wasted on corruption. Now, first of all, that's such a dumb, obviously 24 inches of water fell in a 24-hour period, and the city wasn't able to contain it. 24 inches of water in one day. I don't care how spongy your city is, that is an exceeding amount of water to contain. But you know what it did? It contained it after 2 days. The day it happened, it was a big problem, and then it receded. And so instead of commending a city for being able to resist the amount of water and drain off the amount of water that it did in the time that it did, you castigate them for the moment that it happened, that it was almost impossible for any city to be able to resist it. I don't know. It's just gross. I've been to a lot of these sponge cities. There's a lot of like interesting things that they can do. But as soon as the reservoir fills up, as soon as the concrete gets saturated, there's no way. It's like dipping a sponge into a pail of water. That sponge is going to saturate as much water as it can, but at a certain point, it can't saturate anymore. And they go directly to corruption. Well, listen, I can go out in this city. Now, I'm not saying that there's no corruption in China. There's corruption everywhere business deals are done. But I also see buildings built. I also see the infrastructure the way it is, and I see the regulations that control the idea of the sponge city. And even when he talks about the subway system and how the subway system should be able to resist stuff like this. Listen, I've been in flooding here in Ningbo where the water has been over the cars, and I go into the subway and I'm like, wow, there's not a drop of water here. But if you dropped 24 inches of water on this city, the subways would be inundated. They would probably fail. Systems have a limit. We're approaching and going beyond that limit on a regular basis in the world we live in today. That's the real problem we got to talk about. What are we giving as far as the world to our kids and things like this? A world that the humans of the past are not prepared for. That's the problem.
Yeah, so the employee of the metro said the design of the metro system allowed it to operate safely. These people are up to their necks in water, right? The design of the metro was allowing it to operate safely, right? Yeah. So the company managers said, we're not going to be the ones that say shut it down.
Okay, so Matt gets into this and starts talking about how the subway should have stopped earlier. I will agree with him. Yeah, the subway should have stopped functioning when the flooding started. What I can probably guess is that they didn't expect once in a 1,000-year flood. And so the system in Zhengzhou, I'm sure, is built to resist, like Ningbo, a fairly severe flood. But what happened in Zhengzhou was beyond severe. Let me give you this little statistic. There was a flood in Taiwan. It dropped 80 millimeters of water in a 24-hour period, and the city was flooded. Cars were floating. That's Taiwan. Zhengzhou, 624. Should the subways have shut down? Yes. Should the subways have known that the flooding was going to be this bad? Of course not. It was unprecedented. There's no way that they could have understood what that weather was going to bring. They were prepared for severe flooding. What they got was unprecedented in all of historical record for thousands of years, not 2 decades. Winston, are you a climate denier? I just thought about that. If you think that if you went beyond 2 decades before this time and you would have found some flooding that would have been over 624, you think you would have? I mean, beyond like going to the Cretaceous period or some hundreds of thousands of years in the past. Because China went back thousands of years, has not seen a flooding like 624 millimeters.
Again, I hate to always be preachy about this, but a top-down system doesn't allow people to prepare for this kind of stuff. I mean, you know why?
Yeah.
Because the government is going to take care of you every single time. Guess what? The government can't stop a freaking flood like this.
But
that should be the entirety of your podcast, guys. The government can't stop a fucking flood. And so the best that they can do is try to prevent the amount of death and try to drain off the flooding as much as possible. The actual flood itself, with that amount of rain, is something that the government cannot prevent. It can't stop it. Any government, not just China.
You can see the employees said that they're not going to stop the train because they didn't want to take responsibility. And that's the problem with this top-down system is you're the one who says, okay, look, it's looking dangerous. Let's stop the metro.
Because what? Because in America, the subway system wouldn't also think twice about shutting down the entire subway system that has been deemed flood-proof, severe flood-proof. He would shut down the subway system. I mean, I believe that the subway system should have been shut down sooner But you also got to understand that it's a human nature thing for them to be like, well, the system is rated to run in severe flooding, so let's keep it going. That's what it is. It just so happens that it wasn't severe flooding, it was unprecedented flooding. If somebody built a building that was earthquake proof in California and said, this building is earthquake proof, don't worry about it, and then you said, somebody was like, oh, we're getting an earthquake, oh, don't worry, we're earthquake proof, but it was just so happened to be an earthquake of like 9.8 on the Richter scale, something unprecedented, and then the building collapsed. Would you fault the people that said, don't worry, because our building was built earthquake proof? It was built severe earthquake proof, not unprecedented earthquake proof. There's always going to be a flood that's going to supersede some sort of flood protection. There's always going to be, some sort of natural disaster that's going to supersede whatever you might have built into your structure to prevent it failing under certain fire or earthquake or landslide or whatever. Eventually, the Mother Nature is going to push so hard against that in the days that we live in today that no matter how robust your system is, it's going to fail. It's a very tragic thing those people died in those subway cars. It's tragic that they didn't shut them down sooner, but they had been promised that these subway systems are new, innovative, and able to resist severe flooding. Unfortunately, Zhengzhou didn't experience severe flooding. They experienced unprecedented flooding. And for that, they were unprepared.
So what the government does is it doesn't take care of its citizens, it deletes them. It completely erases their existence because you as a Chinese person, according to the government, doesn't deserve to be alive or acknowledged anyway.
You as a Chinese person do not deserve to be alive according to the Chinese government. Now, if you guys are Laowhy86 fans and you guys have watched his videos, if you're new to watching his videos, he is lying to you. He is disgusting in this presentation of the way that the Chinese government cares about its people. Do you know that the CPC, CCP, whatever, the government of China right now has 90 million people that make up the CCP. That's from the high officials all the way down. Do you know that in the pandemic period, they locked down entire cities to prevent the populace from getting infected? They laid down harsh rules to try to make sure that we were all safe. They care very much for the people of China. You know, there's no 600,000 people that have died in America here in China. There just isn't. Because China cares for the individuals of China. It cares for the China as a whole. Laowhy86 tries to talk from a standpoint of authority, but he spews so much garbage. I don't care if he doesn't like the government and stuff like that. But speak truth. The government cares about its people. If the government in China didn't care about its people, the people here would rise up and overthrow the government. And they haven't yet. As a matter of fact, they have a fairly high approval rate here in China, especially currently.
Now, I also want to acknowledge some of the heroics that have come out of this situation. You have seen people helping each other, you know, with like strings and ropes to try and get, you know, rescue people that are trapped.
Yeah, it really goes against the narrative of like, not my job that you see the Chinese government promote.
Yeah.
So then Winston starts talking about how there are some heroic stories that coming out of Zhengzhou, people using strings, you know, to help people out of the water. There's fucking always trying to make it sound lame. There's people doing amazing things during that. They're done. Zhengzhou is not flooded anymore. Not like the videos, the horrific videos that I was showing on my Twitter the other day. They're done. They've surpassed, gotten beyond that. But during that flooding, there was a lot of heroic stories, amazing stories, successful stories. And Laowhy86, Matt, just likes to chime in with these. He's like that student in the back that always throws the bubblegum at the head of the person in the front seat. You know what I mean? Like, he's always got to insert himself. And so he says, he's like, yeah, people are helping each other because, you know, China normally promotes the idea of, if it's not my job, I'm not going to help you. This kind of spectator syndrome, which exists everywhere. Spectator syndrome is not a Chinese problem. For those of you that don't know, it's like if you see somebody in danger, you end up staying aside because you feel like maybe your neighbors are going to help you. But really, it ends up becoming sort of a spectator where you're all watching this tragedy, but nobody's helping. China has a historic record of people going out of their way to help their fellow man or woman. I have seen it firsthand. I've seen news reports. Laowhy86 is trying to downplay the heroic nature of humans, but in this case, Chinese. In any attempt to degrade Chinese, he's saying, yeah, people are helping each other for a change. Most of the time they wouldn't. That's untrue.
Well, I can tell you myself from the footage that I've seen at least 25 plus people.
Yeah, just
that
from
are
random
dead.
cell phone
Yeah.
videos.
Again, they're talking about the miscalculation of deaths. Now, they recorded it was 31, now it's 51. It's going to go up. They're saying, we saw clips of dead bodies. Well, there was a lot of clips of people floundering. I heard reports that a lot of those people that were floundering ended up finding dry land. So he's looking at anecdotal evidence, and he's drawing a lot of conclusions from them. I'm going to wait for the official death toll to understand. I'm sure it's probably going to be over 100. It's probably going to be over. But it doesn't matter what China says, because Winston is going to be able to say it was much higher than that. I'm going to even say something even more. Does China sometimes fudge numbers with regards to death toll? Probably. I wouldn't put it past him. I think that a lot of people survived that he thinks probably died. I've seen a lot of videos of the dead as well. China knows that a lot of us have seen the videos of the dead, and so there's going to be a number that's going to come out in a few days. But it takes time to calculate that number. Hell, you know, when that condo collapsed in Florida, there was like 150 people missing for weeks before they understood exactly what the death toll was. But these guys want to jump on it real quick and blame, which doesn't help anybody, before anybody knows anything for sure. But we're talking about dead citizens here, so let's give them time to figure out and calculate the number.
My heart goes out to everybody who had
ditto.
to endure this disgusting natural flood phenomenon, this disaster. Yeah, you know, it's down to poor infrastructure and bad management by the government.
Poor infrastructure and bad management by the government. The natural unprecedented flood is caused, or the tragedy was caused, not by the unprecedented flood, but by the infrastructure and management of China for an unprecedented flood.
And then all you see is the heroic efforts of the government. You're not seeing a whole lot of Chinese media talk about the honorable citizens doing this.
Yeah.
No, it's how the army did it.
You're not talking about the honorable citizens saving people. It's all about the government. All the clips that I've seen, especially from the instant of the flooding, were all normal people doing heroic things. I pull up my phone and all I see are stories of average citizens in Zhengzhou. What you're doing, Matt, is you're taking away, because you've got this idea, you've got this narrative you want to push to people that are ignorant. Listen, people here in China, they know you're full of shit. They know you're full of shit. The average people. They're looking on their phones and they're seeing aunties and uncles and brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers helping each other in this hour of need. Neighbors, other people in the community helping each other in these hours of need to try to save them in a tragedy. Of course, you're going to see a lot of videos of military and service members and police and fire out there helping each other too. You'll see that anywhere in the world. Why are you twisting this into some sort of a nasty blame game and trying to encourage people in their ignorance to misunderstand China? That's the problem. It's because the people here, they know you're full of shit. They know that you have strings of truth, right? There's some things that the government does here is imperfect. There's some things that people are frustrated about. There's people that want to overthrow CCP, just like there's people that want to overthrow the American government. There's people that are unhappy. There's people that are happy. But you try and paint this picture like China, the situation in China is wholly unique in a way that is not true. Chinese people are helping each other. I see those videos on TV, like actual network TV here in China. Humans helping humans. And you're degrading that. You're saying, oh, they're not even focusing on that in China. They're only focusing on the military rescues. Do you realize The only people that can buy your bullshit when you say that are either ignorant Chinese who really hate the CCP, which there are, or they're ignorant outsiders who can't turn on the TV here in China and see humans rescuing humans, who can't see the death toll rising, who can't get the alerts on their phone saying, look out, there's more weather coming your way, be careful. They can't see that. They trust you. And in trusting you, they walk into a trap of hate, a trap to hate, which is your intention. I know it. It's okay. I've seen all of your other videos. Your trap is to get people to hate China. I understand. You don't like it here. You left. You escaped through a border by handing somebody your passport and them stamping it and letting you go. It's an amazing, harrowing escape. Escape from China. But you're out, and you didn't like the way that you were treated, and so your objective now is to slander China carte blanche. I understand. It's your MO. Mine is different from yours. I'm trying to be a little bit more balanced. Maybe I'm a bit too pro-China. But I'd rather be this side of the fence than your side, because your side is propagating some messed up hate. Anyways, back.
You know where Xi Jinping is right now in these floods?
Not there.
He's in Tibet. Your leader disappeared during COVID.
Yep.
Whereas the rest of the world had their leaders
Remember,
up front.
he actually disappeared.
Yes.
Your leader disappeared during COVID, whereas other leaders of other countries were right in front.
Every country had their leader up front trying to calm the populace down, saying, I'm here with you guys. That's just what you do as a leader.
Sure.
And that would have been a much better thing to do. Okay, let's rewind, okay? Who was up front here in China during COVID? The doctors, the scientists, the public health people. Xi Jinping almost disappeared. You're right. I didn't see a lot of them. But you know what I heard a lot of? Scientists, virologists, epidemiologists, doctors, engineers, building hospitals. I saw things happening. I didn't need some fluffy politician going up and saying, we will beat this. There's only 15 cases. We'll have 0. Would you rather have a leader that goes up and says, don't worry about it. You don't even need your masks. You know, we got 15 cases going to be 0. Meanwhile, talking to his advisors saying you really should worry about this. But he's like, my election's coming up. I don't give a shit. Would you rather have that politician up front in your face telling you lies? Or would you have a situation like in China where there was all the professionals that were out there saying, wear your mask, be careful, social distancing, we're closing down cities, we're creating these kind of things to protect the populace? Which one would you rather have? I really can't believe somebody in America, of all places, castigating China for their leader taking a step back and allowing the professionals and the system to run, that they've built this system to try to control the virus. And while sitting in America, where the leaders, even today, are bickering and castigating blame instead of finding solutions. And right now in America, for the sheer reason that the leader of America stood up in the very front, even in front of the epidemiologists, in front of all of the virologists, in front of all of the people like Anthony Fauci and all the people that were trying to tell people what to do to save their lives. He literally pushed himself to the front, just like he did at that G20, pushed himself to the front and put himself at front. And now the results of that, even though he's not even in power anymore, is that nobody trusts anything. They don't trust vaccines. They don't trust masks. They don't trust their doctors. I just read an article where nurses are getting death threats. That is a result of the leader of the country that doesn't know everything about viruses, only knows narcissism and how to make things sensational, stood up at the front in the middle of a virus pandemic.
You know, whenever there is a natural disaster, you usually see the president or the leader go to that place. You know, to go over there, be on the ground, show your support. It's
always been like that.
But not in China. Not with Xi Jinping. He runs away like a coward.
All our previous presidents wouldn't go into the situation when there's flooding. First of all, it takes away infrastructure away from people who are trying to do rescues to try to coordinate the arrival of a world leader. Sometimes they'll come later. and maybe throw some paper towel to some victims of flooding in Puerto Rico, which Donald Trump didn't even think was part of America enough to care about. There's a million examples of leaders that don't go directly into the fray for very valid reasons. It doesn't matter to Winston. All he wants to do is find a way to blame Xi Jinping and make Xi Jinping look bad. And listen, okay, you want to make Xi Jinping look bad, that's fine.
Saptarshi Sengupta, why even build a large urbanized area with the floodplains in the first place? Or did excessive damming distort the flow of the river? This is said. It's a little of both. I mean, it's poor planning and the idea that they just plan cities around very poor areas, like bad areas.
They just plan cities around very poor areas for flooding. You know, if you understood the geography of China, you'd understand that, you know, there's only a certain amount of places that are suitable for major cities. There are areas that are flat. China has a lot of mountainous areas that they build cities in. But it's not like they sit around and they go, oh, this place is the worst place for a city. This place is going to be flooded real soon. Let's build a city here. Oh, that place is too nice. That place is too perfect for a city. Let's not build a city there. To be honest, cities develop around rivers and coastlines and all sorts of different places because hundreds, if not thousands of years ago, settlers found those areas to be good for irrigation, good for finding food, good for transportation, all sorts of reasons. Not blatantly just by saying, you know, let's build a new city in a place that would be a horrible place to build a city. That's just dumb. That's a dumb thing to say. That's a dumb thing for your mind to simply go to. I mean, granted, they're just answering questions like haphazardly, so they don't have time to really think these things through. But this is their go-to thinking.
They love building dams as well because it's a show of strength and power. Like
we can control
leadership
nature.
In China loves to build dams.
They love it.
It's just their way of saying, look how powerful we are.
Leadership in China loves to build dams because they're big and powerful. That's the only reason. If you really understood the history of China, you'd understand that the plains of China, especially around the Yellow River and the Yangtze, they are very flood prone. For thousands of years in the past, of all of their amazing recorded history that hasn't been destroyed, like he says. There was an emperor in, 2123 to 2025. His name was Da Yu the Great. And he was notable for building dams and trying to control the flow of the rivers in these large areas of China, because there was huge floods, devastating floods that were taking massive amount of life on a regular basis. So he instituted a system to try to create some controls on these rivers. Whatever your idea of dams and flood control is, what he did was amazing and good. The reason that he was celebrated was not because he was strong and building just strong dams. If he wanted to just be a strong man, he would have just built big statues of himself. No, he was building dams, redirecting water flow for irrigation, to save lives from flooding, to control all sorts of things. Don't let these guys dictate to you the history of China in a false way. China has historically built a lot of flood controls, not simply because they want to be strong people. It's because these flood controls help to control the average and even the maximum amount of water that normally flows down these rivers. But we're in a weird place right now where normal isn't normal anymore. Normal is beyond the extremes. And that's why we're running into these problems globally, not just in China. Don't let these guys talk to you about Chinese history like they know everything. They obviously know some things, but the things that they know, they twist. And the things that might be positive about China, they throw out because it doesn't have anything to do with devastation or the collapse of China.
Gregor Chris, sorry, your name is very hard to read. What is your opinion's possible way for regime change in China? We talk about this often. It would have to be economic collapse.
Yeah.
Or devastation.
Yeah.
The only way that China could change, in their eyes, and become a better place is through economic collapse or devastation. That's their aim. That's what they're trying to become a part of. They're trying to become a part of China's economic collapse or devastation. If they can help that happen, in their eyes, China will become a better place with devastation and economic collapse. I don't want China's economic collapse, because if China economically collapses, the whole world's going to hurt. I don't want China devastated, because they even say in this that they're like, we got a lot of people in China we care about. We put these truths out because we care about China. Well, if you put those truths out because there's people you care about in China, but the ultimate goal of this is to have economic collapse or devastation, you don't have anything in between. There's no in between. There's no like 10-step plan in order to negate economic collapse or devastation and get China to where we want it to be. They're not offering any solutions. That's kind of the problem I have with these guys, is that they never offer any solutions. It's always, we want to see China economically collapse or have devastation. Those are the two things that they're hoping for. Well, first of all, if you do care about the people in China, you wouldn't want to see China economically collapse or be devastated by anything. I don't want to see that. I want to see things like them building cities like Xiong'an for 25 million people to live in new, beautiful houses and infrastructure. I want to see them plant more trees, which they're planning, build more solar power centers to put more wind turbines out. I want to see them do more social programs and push more. They don't really talk about the things they want to see China improve on. I kind of feel bad for them because they don't see anything positive anymore. The only thing that they want to see is economic collapse or devastation, because that will create the opportunity for China to emerge like a phoenix on the other side of a devastated country or an economically collapsed country. Well, I see if China economically collapses, you're going to see devastation. Economic collapse in China would devastate the entire world. And it would accomplish the goal. There would be a huge change in China with regards to things, but economic collapse leads to revolution, civil war, and probably millions upon millions upon millions upon millions upon millions upon, we're not talking about millions of people dead. We're talking about tens of millions of people dying with an economic collapse. This is a video I'd like to make in the future, actually, because it's such a flippant and easy thing for them to say. We want China to change. We want China to change. We love all these people in China. We want China to change. How is China going to change? Well, economic collapse or devastation. Those are the two options. That's what we'd like to see. That's what they said. They'd like to see that. Economic collapse or devastation. So when you see those objectives, you see this video from another point of view. They want to show this flooding in Zhengzhou and the typhoon which is upcoming, what they'll be talking about. They want to talk about it in the terms of devastation, economic collapse, because those are the narratives that they feel will help to change China. The more devastation, the more economic collapse, the better. And that's just a disgusting way to think about it. And it's not the way I think about it. I like to see it as innovation and diplomacy and steps forward. But they don't care about innovation. They don't care about steps forward. They don't care that China's planted more trees than any other country. They don't care that they're doing amazing jobs with wind farms. They don't care that they're building amazing innovative cities for its populace. They don't care that they're raising people out of poverty. They don't care that there's amazing new buildings that are replacing the decrepit ones. They don't care that they did a good job through COVID. They don't care about any of that. They will create the narrative in order to suit what they want. Economic collapse and devastation, because in their eyes, that's the only thing that's going to move China into a better future in their eyes. It's a very selfish worldview, because they see, okay, we're on the outside. We're foreigners. I want to see, even though they have family and loved ones that they say that live in China, but their loved ones will be shouldering the devastation and economic collapse. And we're not talking about a day or a week or a month or a year. An economic collapse in China would disrupt the entire country for 50 years. Destroy it. the devastation on a level that would shift the government structure of China. Devastation like Three Gorges Dam. Like if the Three Gorges Dam was to break, you're talking about 100 million dead. If it was to just pop. Now, China wouldn't let that happen. But that's what their aim is. Isn't that gross? Yeah, the only way we could see China become a better country is if it's devastation or economic collapse. That's why they appreciate this picture of the flag of China with all of these hands, most of them drowning. They're all drowning. Everybody's drowning. They don't want to talk about the rescue efforts by the ordinary citizens. They want to make you think devastation, economic collapse. That's their total motive. Everything about China: devastation, economic collapse, devastation, economic collapse, devastation, economic collapse. He's pretty much, revealed his cards. And now that you know that, now that you know it, you're armed with this fact that anything that comes out of his channel, ADV China, ADV Podcast, SerpentZa, Laowhy86, it's all going to be geared towards informing the ignorant populace that doesn't know China that China, in order to become better, needs economic collapse or devastation. There's no in between. There's nothing they're going to talk about in any sort of positive way because it doesn't lead towards devastation or economic collapse. They can't talk anything good about the system of China in any way that doesn't lead to devastation or economic collapse. He says it in the video. I've said it many times. He says, I've said it many times. Devastation, economic collapse, devastation, economic collapse. If you will watch a lot of their recent videos, there's not a lot of positive that they talk about because none of the positive supports economic collapse or devastation. But there is a lot of positive in China. A lot of positive in China. Now, if you want to talk about economic collapse and devastation, it's happening all over the world in many different ways, in many different quantities, and in many different amounts. A lot of it is happening in the West today. There's a lot of things that China could teach the West. There's a lot of things that the West could teach China, the East. East could teach West, West could teach East. But if you simply create a worldview where the West, because it's democracy, is perfect, and China is filthy, disgusting, and the only thing that can fix it is economic collapse or devastation, there's no middle ground here. There's no place from which people can learn from each other. China could, quite possibly, take baby steps in the direction that they have, reducing their environmental negative impacts more and more and more. Let's put pressure on them. Let's put pressure on them. Let's not insult them. Let's not degrade them. Let's use diplomacy. Remember that word? That's diplomacy. Let's share. Let's understand. We are living in a weird conspiratorial world where, we look at everything through this muddied lens. But there's way more to this world than this muddy lens. There's way more to moving China in a way that makes China a better place than simply saying we need to have devastation or economic collapse. I personally see China moving in that direction, a good direction, not the economic collapse or the devastation. And I see natural disasters like this. I see devastation in China, but I don't applaud it. They applaud it. Devastation, devastation. We're getting closer to what they want. They might say, we don't want to see this. We don't want to see this. He wants to see it. I hate to see this, all this, human tragedy. They want devastation and economic collapse. They want it. It's the only way that they see China becoming a better place. That's pretty gross. And if that's the way that you see it, then I feel very, very sad for what is on the other side of the devastation and collapse, an economic collapse that you guys claim is going to be the ultimate rescuer of China into this new world that's going to make China a better place. I would much rather see China moving in the direction it is. supplying products, inexpensive products around the world, helping other countries provide infrastructure that connects them to the other parts of the world, not using war in countries under false pretenses halfway around the globe. China has skirmishes with countries that it's very intimately related with. It also is part of conflicts as part of greater coalitions of countries. You know that if China had weapons of mass destruction in Cuba pointed towards America, that would be on every news channel in America, and we would be at war. America and China would be at war tomorrow. Well, America has weapons of mass destruction pointed at China from multiple countries in which they have bases all over the place. But you don't see China claiming to want to start war with America. But America has done this on a number of occasions, started wars in other countries under false pretenses, in countries that they have, no border sharing with. So I see China as this is not a horrible model to look at. Certainly not to at least look at from a positive direction, and also plot ways in which the country can move forward into a place that might have it as a very responsible leader of the future world that we're going to live in. Because China, unfortunately, for a lot of you guys watching who hate China, China's going to be taking the mantle of leader of the free world here in a short time.
AgroBlaze, do you see China becoming the global power in the next 10 to 20 years? No, they will not become the global superpower.
And we should appreciate them and try to allow for more solutions than devastation and economic collapse. I'm not going to watch your video anymore. I think I've got the gist of it. It's gross, and I've got to edit this thing together. But there is a typhoon that's headed for us. It'll be here tomorrow. It's going to drop a massive amount of rain. We all know it. We've moved our cars. The video from Zhengzhou that we watched, all of us in China, everybody's talking about it, is like, this is the new normal. We can't accept what we thought was severe weather anymore. The Zhengzhou and the Europe and the heat dome over America, they're changing the perspective of people that live in the current world that we live in. And so we're all thinking, Annie and I, my wife, we filled up the bathtub. We put the car on top of IKEA because IKEA is a above ground parking structure because we're afraid there's going to be flooding in our underground parking lot. Maybe, maybe not, but we're preparing. The Zhengzhou is a real interesting example. They claim that the information is being repressed, but so much information has been given out to everybody that we are all uber aware now. We won't forget about this tomorrow like they claim. We'll remember it. It's in our social memory now that these things are capable of happening. I hope that no more people die, but I also hope that numbers will be revised as more and more bodies are found, and that that China is honest with us with regards to the amount of people that died in this tragedy. I see them coming through. I see the numbers that will step up over time. But it's very, very easy to create stories around a narrative that you want to push. It's harder to look at the bigger picture that might be against the worldview right now that hates China and look at the situation from all sides. And we live in a society that if it bleeds, it leads. And rescuing people from a flood is not bleeding. They want to focus on the dead and the destruction and the economic collapse and devastation. Well, that's not my MO. I don't see... The other thing is that that's not where China is headed. So you better get with the program and try to be a positive force for this new thing. These two guys have a real opportunity to be a positive force, to not only talk about the bad, but also talk about the good. But the good isn't bleeding, so it won't be leading on their views. So they're not going to even nuance what they're saying to kind of give a better view. It's all geared towards driving hate towards Asians, hate towards China, and we're seeing the result of it in the world. They're not a force for good right now, as much as they might think it. So, anyways, like, subscribe, share, comment. I know I haven't posted a lot of videos recently. I'm going to put this one out as soon as I can, but yeah, Jayo, take it easy, and yeah, I know a lot of you guys like to watch your stuff, and it's fine, but put in the perspective that the end result that they're gearing towards, the only solution they see for a good China is devastation and economic collapse. Anything in between doesn't get them where they want China to be.